Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning, this is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. This program is broadcast every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. And this show is designed to give my guests a chance to give their life story. This morning I have an elected official who's pretty much going to get into his position here in Connecticut. He is the state senator of the 2nd District here in Connecticut, State Senator Eric Coleman. Good morning, Senator Coleman.
Good morning.
All right.
Thank you for having me on your program.
No problem. I really feel honored to have you here for the first time. And usually I would kind of get into a biography format, but because you're running for election, and this is a very important position that you have, I just kind of want to get into, your career as a state senator and pretty much your future plans. First of all, what technically is the state senator for the 2nd District? Could you kind of define that position?
Well, as you know, the state senator is a member of the General Assembly. There are 2 chambers or 2 houses in the General Assembly. The lower house is the House of Representatives. The upper chamber is the State Senate. There are 151 members in the House of Representatives and 36 members in the State Senate. So I am one of 36 state senators in Connecticut. And together, we make the laws for the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
That's essentially the position of the state senator. And my district is the 2nd senatorial district. It includes Hartford, Bloomfield, and Windsor. In Hartford, I represent all of the north end of Hartford and some of the west end of Hartford. In Bloomfield, I represent virtually all of Bloomfield except for 1 voting district. And in Windsor, I represent all of Windsor except for the northernmost voting district in Windsor.
Okay. Now, you've been a state senator in the 2nd District since 1995.
Yeah, there's an interesting history. I became state representative after Thurman Milner vacated the state representative seat.
Okay.
And as we all know, he was elected mayor of the city of Hartford. He began serving as mayor, vacated the state representative's position. And at the time, I was working as an attorney with Neighborhood Legal Services right on Albany Avenue. And I was a civil rights attorney representing people that had employment discrimination and housing discrimination issues. And as part of my responsibility, I was doing a lot of outreach with community organizations, and some of the organizations and people that I had worked with approached me and asked me, had I ever thought about running for a political office? And I really had, because when I was growing up in New Haven, I had 2 relatives that served on the Board of Aldermen in New Haven. And I think when I was in 3rd grade or so, they asked me and some of my cousins to distribute some of their campaign literature door to door, doing leafleting. They asked me to stuff envelopes, and it all seemed very exciting to me. And you probably couldn't convince me that I single-handedly helped them to get reelected to the Board of Aldermen in New Haven.
Okay.
But that's where the seed was planted, so to speak, and I was first acquainted with elective office and politics. And so when I came to Hartford to go to law school, in the back of my mind, I thought about if there was an opportunity to be involved in public service in that way, that would be something that I would pursue. And so I got elected to serve as state representative back in 1982, and I began serving in that position in 1983. Interestingly enough, I was involved in a primary, and I won the primary by 15 votes. went on to the general election. I won that election by about 1,500 votes. So I began serving as state representative. And then, ironically enough, after his service as mayor of the city of Hartford, Mayor Milner wanted to serve in the state Senate. He got elected to serve in the state Senate. He served one term, and at the conclusion of his term, he decided that he would not seek re-election.
Okay.
And so there's a very similar scenario. He declined to seek re-election. There would be a vacancy in the Senate seat, and I decided to become a candidate for the vacant Senate seat. Campaigned, again, was involved in a primary, which I won, and of course won the general election. So I was elected to the state Senate in 1994, and I began serving in that position in 1995.
Okay. Now, obviously, State Senator Coleman, a lot of things probably has changed since you first became elected as a state rep in 1983. Do you see some of the issues that we're dealing with today more difficult than it was back then, or is it more easier? Could you kind of define where you think we have changed or where we have come since that period of time? Well,
let me respond by saying this. A lot has changed, including the conditions at the state capitol.
Okay.
When I was first elected as state representative, there was no legislative office building.
Okay.
All of the members of the House of Representatives and the state Senate were squeezed into the various rooms, nooks and crannies in the Capitol building.
Yes.
That was our office. When constituents came to see us, we basically found a corner of some privacy and had whatever discussions we had to have with our constituents. When a phone call came in, I recall my very first year there being like a picnic table full of telephones.
Okay.
And you had to guess which one was ringing.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes you'd answer it, but it would be for another representative. And so oftentimes you would, probably be mistaken for somebody's secretary. But you'd pass the phone along to whoever was available or whoever the person on the other line was seeking to speak to. Now, of course, we have the legislative office building. Every senator and every representative has his own private office in that building, as well as there are hearing rooms on the first and second floor of the legislative office building. So I think it's much more accommodating now, not only for the people in office, but for the members of the public who have to access the people in office and the building. The issues, I think we've made some progress in some respects. And unfortunately, I think there's been some stagnation in some other respects. And what I mean by that is, there have been ebbs and flows in the economy. There was a time when the economy nationwide and the economy of Connecticut were fairly booming. Unfortunately, today is not the same case. And with respect to Hartford and Connecticut, we've gone to a fairly broad-based economy, meaning that Hartford residents could depend on employment through the defense industry, the financial services industry, the tourism and entertainment industry. There was manufacturing that was going on in Hartford. And all of those things, with the possible exception of the defense industry, are on the decline. And so there are less employment opportunities, less training opportunities for Hartford residents. And the foundation of our economy here in Hartford needs to be refortified.
Yes, I just want to clarify something. Obviously, you represent the north end of Hartford mostly, and parts of the west end, and you represent the majority of Bloomfield and many areas of Windsor. Would you say the areas that you represent in Windsor and Bloomfield have really changed for the better? Because it seems like a lot of economic development now is starting to move out towards certain areas in Windsor, in certain areas in Bloomfield. And I kind of asked this question to you. It seems like to me, if I was in your position, I would look at the most difficult part of representing your areas that you represent would be most likely the north end of Hartford, which seems to have the highest crime rate, seems to have the highest unemployment problems, seems to have the highest disparities. Is that how you look at it when you go down to the legislative? You kind of look at, well, one part of my area that I represent, Bloomfield and Windsor, might be progressing a lot better, and the north end seems to have the most issues? Or how do you kind of look at the whole spectrum?
Well, my approach is to try and address whatever needs are affecting the district. You know, if there are needs in Bloomfield to be addressed, I try to do that. If there are needs in Hartford to be addressed, I try to do that. If there are needs in Windsor that need to be addressed, I try to do that.
Okay.
Hartford has to be a particular point of attention because Hartford is the capital city. Hartford is the place that provides most of the social services. Hartford is, it should be, it probably is not so much now, the central business district of the region. It is, I think, the hub of the region, and I think the surrounding suburbs have to recognize the significance and the importance of Hartford, because in many respects, as goes Hartford, so goes the region. You know, if Hartford is flourishing, then it's very likely that the rest of the region will be doing well.
Okay.
And if Hartford, you know, is in decline, if Hartford is struggling, that will impact the surrounding suburbs and the rural areas of the region. So I think it's important to focus particular attention, but not exclusive attention, on the city of Hartford. And as you indicate, you know, there's a large unemployment problem in Hartford, but the nature of the economy that I was trying to describe a bit earlier is such that, you know, it's not only Hartford residents that are having difficulty finding jobs these days. It's Windsor residents, it's Bloomfield residents. There are a lot of people that in years past are out of work that would never have been out of work. People with master's degrees and advanced education, as well as people who are seeking entry-level positions. There's, you know, just troublesome unemployment throughout the district and throughout the state. And it deserves, you know, the employment issue deserves, the jobs issue deserves considerable focus of attention.
Well, as a state senator in this second district, your best role of advocation for some type of changes would be to introduce a bill through the legislative. Is that really what you can do pretty much single-handedly, or is there other components that have to come together to make some dramatic changes here?
Yeah, you know, I think collaboration is the key in the legislature, although, you know, people may beat their breast and attempt to take a lot of credit for passing a bill or advancing a certain issue. We all must bear in mind that in order to get anything done in the state legislature, you have to have 76 people in the House of Representatives that are willing to vote in favor of it, and 19 people in the state Senate that are willing to vote in favor of it. So, you know, there's a lot of interaction with colleagues. There's a lot of collaboration and recruitment of allies to any particular bill or any particular issue, and that's the way it has to work.
Could you kind of identify or name one particular bill that you introduced to the legislative that have really made a difference in one of the areas that you represent?
Well, I think it's yet to make a difference, and I'm hoping that it will have a very positive impact. But one of the bills that I introduced in the previous session and was passed had to do with youth violence prevention. And my theory behind submission of the bill was that there are troubled youth in our community. There may be at-risk youth in our community. And we have to be in a position to identify what are the symptoms of a youth being at risk. And once we identify that, we have to use whatever available resources are at our disposal, whether it be institutions like schools or hospitals or mental health facilities, social services organizations. We have to be able to make referrals of a so-called at-risk youth to the agency so that that youth can get the assistance and the help that they need to get. And then as we're talking about employment, I think to a large extent, whether a youth is going to be engaged in a successful life or not depends upon whether that youth acquires some skills in order to fend successfully in the job market. And so in the state of Connecticut and in the General Assembly, we authorized the issuance of bonds for capital improvement projects. We do a lot of that. And what I've attempted to do is to tie the state's issuance of bonds for capital improvement projects, whether it be something so simple as the renovation of the Northwest Jones School to be the Johnny Rogers Cultural Center, or the construction of a new office for Catholic Charities, to tie the construction work and the renovation work to such projects to some sort of set aside for young people in the state of Connecticut. And by that I mean that if the state is going to contribute money to the construction or renovation of a project, then I think it is appropriate for the state to ask the people who are developing that project to hire young people, to give them an opportunity to train and be employed, or gain an employment experience in connection with such projects that the state has invested in.
Okay, Senator Coleman, we're up on our first break. We're going to come right back and get into the second part of this show and kind of see where we're at and going towards the next chapter. This is Jonathan Small hosting All About You this morning with my special guest, State Senator Eric Coleman of the 2nd District, and we will be right back very shortly. Thank you.
I'm very happy to be here tonight to congratulate and support AccessTV.org. AccessTV.org has reached hundreds and thousands of people. It's done a great job informing the community about important issues in our city, our state, and our nation. I congratulate Stan McCauley and Nyesha for the job they've done. And now with their new format, which will reach many more people and which will be available through many more formats, the future is very bright for AccessTV.org. Congratulations, and may you continue your mission of informing our community. Thank you very much.
At Hartford Public Schools, we care about one thing above all: the future of our kids. That's why we're dedicated to providing all students with the knowledge and skills needed in the new global culture. Hartford Public Schools is thriving. More student success stories, more world-class facilities, more university and corporate partnerships, more amazing talent coming and staying in Hartford. This is how education is supposed to work. Welcome to Hartford Public Schools, where the future is present.
This is Jonathan Small. We're back here. I'm hosting All About You this morning with my special guest, State Senator of the 2nd District in Connecticut, State Senator Eric Coleman. Senator Coleman, I kind of want to get into some key positions that you have. You're the co-chair of the Judiciary Committee here. What type of position is technically that you have?
Well, as I know you're aware, in the Connecticut General Assembly, we have a joint committee system, which means that the committees are made up of senators and members of the House of Representatives alike. And so we have co-chairs of all of the standing committees of the General Assembly. And there'll be one senator who is the chair of the committee, and there'll be one representative who's chair of the committee. And I've been very fortunate to have been appointed to chair the Judiciary Committee.
Okay.
And the Judiciary Committee's cognizance is criminal justice issues and the courts, the judicial department. We also oversee the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities and the Department of Corrections, and most legal matters fall within the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee.
Now, I know you're a state senator, but many times when you get into criminal justice issues, and I hear this a lot by our mayor that we have here in Hartford and other mayors, that sometime when you're releasing a lot of inmates who have felons on their records, that the reentry system is a major problem, and the state is sending a lot of the problems back to the city. Is there anything that you have been able to look into this particular problem that we have here, mostly in our urban centers, but you represent many parts of the north end of Hartford?
Yeah, I think my approach has resulted in putting a great deal more emphasis on rehabilitation within the Department of Corrections. There is a school of thought that prisons are for punishment. And I'm not of that school of thought. I mean, I think punishment has to be an aspect of prisons, but I think we fail as a society if we exclusively approach prisons as places for punishment. And we'll miss opportunities to make better people through rehabilitation, through education, training, dealing with maybe personal issues like maybe there should be anger management programs. So, I think as a result of my efforts and the efforts of some of my colleagues, there's a different mindset within the Department of Corrections. And the goal is that when an inmate leaves the system, that inmate is a better individual and a potentially much more productive person re-entering the community than that person was when he left the community or she left the community and became incarcerated. So that's one aspect of it. I think as the co-chair of the Judiciary Committee, there's been a lot of emphasis that I've placed upon re-entry initiatives. And a lot of people would probably say that a person who was convicted of a serious offense was probably never feeling a part of the real fabric of a community. And so maybe it's a misnomer to talk in terms of reintegrating a person into society after a period of incarceration. But at the same time, I think that we have to think in terms of trying to make a better person, because for probably 90% of the inmates within the Connecticut Department of Corrections, at some point in time, that 90% is going to reach a discharge date.
Mm-hmm.
And they will have to return to a community.
Yes.
So I think it behooves communities like Hartford, but not just Hartford, it behooves the state of Connecticut to make certain that once that release date is reached, the person that's returning to the community comes prepared to stay on an appropriate path and to be a contributing member of society. So that is now the goal of the Department of Corrections, and I feel proud to say that I've had some role to play in that redirection of the Department of Corrections. Some other things that I think I've been able to accomplish as the co-chair of the Judiciary Committee. Well, I've been a member of the Judiciary Committee for the entire time that I've been a member of the legislature. And I'm very proud of the fact that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of people of color and the number of women who've been appointed to become judges in the state of Connecticut. I think it brings a new mindset and a new perspective to the criminal justice system when you have people from a diverse background and experience who will be able to apply their experiences to the cases that come before them, especially in the criminal courts. I feel and hope that that would be true. So I think we'll have a favorable, as a result of me being chair of the Judiciary Committee, I think we'll have a favorable impact on the criminal justice system and the correction system. And that's just, I suppose, two of what I view as the benefits of Eric Coleman being the co-chair of the Judiciary Committee.
And I know you have another title as the chair of the Planning and Development Committee, but before we get to that title, kind of because you was born and raised and grew up in an urban city, if I believe New Haven is the city that you were born and raised in. And I also know that you had a pretty much a high grade point average in college, a 3.5 grade average in the University of Connecticut and also Columbia. And it seems like to me, and I don't know if the times you grew up in was a lot differently than the times that we are in today, but it seems like to me there had to be some initiative on yourself, your family, to realize that education is very important. And if you was hoping that some legislator was to come in and implement a bill to help me get a job or to help me get educated, that probably wouldn't have advanced you as far as you've been advanced up to this stage. Saying all that to realize that we have a terrible education disparities in this urban center that you represent in the 2nd District, particularly in the north end of Hartford. How come the situation of getting people to realize that education and preparation is not really being reached at an early age the way it needs to be? What's kind of keeping this from changing, in your opinion?
Well, I oftentimes feel and say that if I had a magic wand, I would wave that magic wand and have everything revert to the way it was in the 50s.
Okay.
So I'm sort of giving away my age, but I went to school, public school, in the 1950s.
Okay.
And during the time that I was in school, obviously I was pushed and motivated by my parents, and I give them credit for doing an excellent job. For whatever shortcomings I have, they have nothing to do with it. For whatever positive characteristics I have as a person, they have everything to do with it.
Okay.
But yes, they put a high emphasis on education, and I was a great student. And, to be a little immodest, but coming out of high school, I was accepted at every college that I applied to, including Yale and Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Dartmouth, many of the Ivy League schools, as well as NYU, BU, and a handful of other colleges. I was just an extraordinary student because I took my education very seriously, and I was highly motivated by my parents. But when I was going through public school, there was a different atmosphere.
Okay.
And I think there was more of what needs to take place today. There was a collaboration between parents and teachers and community. And it was very obvious to me that parents and teachers were working together. And just by way of example, the teachers always got the benefit of the doubt from the parents.
Okay.
It was unheard of for a student. It happened every now and then, but it was shocking. It was unheard of for a student to talk back to a teacher or to exhibit any kind of disrespect to a teacher. In most cases, in my neighborhood, if a student came home and complained of some mistreatment by a teacher, the teacher always got the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
If the teacher called home to complain about a student's behavior or the student's lack of preparation, there was hell to pay.
Right.
Parents were working very closely with teachers. My mother was an officer in back then it was the PTO. Now I hear it more often referred to as the PTO. During my era as Parent Teachers Association, more often today I hear Parent Teacher Organization. But there was, a very close working relationship between all of my teachers and my mother in particular. And I think that's the way it needs to be today. Also, what was different back in the 50s is, you would hear of people using drugs or alcohol to a limited degree, but it's nowhere near, it was back then nowhere near as pervasive as it is today.
And also, can I ask you one other
Sure.
question? Just this past week in the capital city, we had a homicide in the broad daylight. And we had 2 homicides. A homeless man was actually found dead on a local street, 2 other shootings. I would also assume you didn't hear about those type of horror stories too
No.
much growing up in the 50s neither.
We would, as youngsters, we would get into fights. We would have disputes. And, even fist fights were probably the wrong way to go about resolving conflicts or disputes. But they would be fist fights.
Right.
And more often than not, the guy that you fought today would become one of your best friends tomorrow.
Right.
That's the way it worked. We didn't think about, feeling so disrespected by someone that we would just have to take them out. Every now and then, someone might be in possession of a knife. Someone might even brandish a knife. But it was just unheard of that there would be such easy access to guns and firearms. That just wasn't taking place during the time that I was growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I guess it begs the question: how did things get so bad? At what point did things change direction? And it just contributes, I think, to some of the negative situations that are occurring within our educational system. You know, people who may have the best of intentions, who may want to do well in school, might not have the necessary support from a parent who may be a teenager herself or himself, or may be a substance abuser, or just may not be prepared in order to nurture and raise a child. And so some youngsters are going to school ill-equipped in that respect, maybe not properly nourished, maybe not having the environment in their home that is conducive to cultural and academic excellence. And so the end result is, I think, things like what is referred to commonly today as the achievement gap.
Well, excuse me, State Senator, we're just about, in fact, we're out of time, but I just wanted to kind of have you relate, you know, your life to people, to let people know that although you are attorney, you are a state senator, you're not out of touch. You clearly understand the issues that people are dealing with. And it's somewhat, this program did kind of reflect a lot on your life and what you've had to go through and what you've been through. So I'm kind of glad it did work out to that level. I also know you're running for re-election. But just quickly, could you kind of tell people why they should vote for State Senator Eric Coleman to become re-elected, if you can, as your last words?
Well, as you properly indicate, I am seeking re-election to the position of State Senator, and I'm doing that because I enjoy public service. There are a lot of things about public service that are challenging, stimulating, and while the compensation is very meager in terms of dollars, there's a great deal of gratification and reward in being able to help people. And once you succeed at helping a person or a family or an organization or a community, it's indescribable, the kind of feeling that you get. As well, there are some things that have been left on the drawing board that I want to go back and address. And one of them has to do with the juvenile justice issue. And that involves the way that the Supreme Court has said juveniles who are sentenced to lengthy periods of incarceration is unconstitutional. And we have to bring that home to the law and order types here in the state of Connecticut so that we can change our methods of sentencing juveniles. I want to be a part of that. There are some local projects as well that I want to bring to fruition. One has to do with the Ebony Horsewomen, and they are proposing to expand their facility in Keeney Park on Vine Street to include an equine therapy program. And there are other organizations such as the Metropolitan Community Development Corporation, which is proposing to construct elderly housing on Main Street, North Main Street in Hartford. I want to continue to assist that organization as well to bring their project to fruition. So I want to also return to co-chair the Judiciary Committee, and as you may be aware, there is some movement in the leadership of the Senate from the Democratic side. The President Pro Tem of the Senate is retiring, and that means that there will be some movement upward for the rest of us. In all likelihood, the current majority leader will become the new President Pro Tem of the Senate. And there will have to be someone to fill the majority leader's position. I want to compete to become the next majority leader in the state Senate. And if that were to occur, that would be a first. Not that I'm counting first, but it will be a fact that there has been no person of color to serve as a majority leader in the House or the Senate in the entire history of the Connecticut General Assembly in the state of Connecticut.
Okay. Those got to obviously be your last words. I really appreciate you coming down here this morning, being my guest on All About You, and I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. State Senator Eric Coleman. This is Jonathan Small. I had enjoyed interviewing State Senator Eric Coleman this morning on All About You. And to people out there, as I say every single week, there's a lot of good shows that you could always look at on accesstv.org. And as I also say every single week to people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.